Good evening, I'm Chief Meteorologist Bob Harrigan with a little red tide update. We're going to wait just a couple of seconds to get some people here on board with this red tide update. It's been such a prevalent problem for us here for several weeks now, working its way up from Charlotte County all the way northward now into Manatee County and even into Pinellas County. But we had a midweek report. We're going to go over that. We're going to go over the wind conditions and also talk about the effects in terms of the red tide and the cleanup efforts that are going on now along the area. And if you have some questions, we'll try to help answer those as well. We do have an article posted on mysuncoast.com with the latest report on our red tide for us here. So let's get to it. Let's show you the map that was issued today from Florida Fish and Wildlife Commission, and they put out this map on a midweek report. It's not a full-blown report, but nonetheless, it is showing continuing problems with red tide all the way from Collier County mainly northward now into Pinellas County. And you can see Pinellas County starting to show up with some moderate levels and also some low levels there. And we're getting red, and red meaning high concentrations. That's over 1 million cells per liter, showing up from Lee County, Collier County, Lee County, mainly through Sarasota County too. You can see all the reds there. Those are all the samples that are showing high concentrations up into North Sarasota, and then continuing into Manatee County, although not as bad, is now starting to spread. Now, I spoke with a fishing guide up in Manatee County who has been checking the waters out as of late. And Captain Scott Moore is telling me that this morning the red tide has now moved past a little bit more of Manatee Avenue. Now, it had been kind of stuck right there, and it's even moved into the mouth of the Manatee River. So we have it spreading northward at this point, and it is turning the water different colors, obviously the reddish brown that we've been so familiar with now with this outbreak of red tide. So as far as the what we do know is that it's growing now to 145 miles of coastline. So that had been at 130. Now it's at 145 miles of coastline being impacted by the red tide. It's not weakening. In some areas it may move a little bit and it will seem like it's weakening, but it's not. It's actually going higher concentrations in some areas. And then it is spreading to Pinellas County. This is the third report in a row that Pinellas County has had some red tide samples showing up. And the smell of decaying fish. Now, this is what's on everyone's mind. Everyone's having an impact now within a few miles of the coast. It used to be just the coastal residents and the folks who lived on the bay, but now it's even spreading to I-75. As far as the dead fish smell goes, and that is prevalent throughout the area all the way through I-75 in some cases out near Lakewood Ranch and places to the east, they are saying that they are smelling some of that dead fish. And that's due to the west wind. The west wind has really kicked in. And not really strong, but that west wind was pretty evident throughout the afternoon and early evening. Now, that has switched around. We'll show you that in just a minute. Now, as far as those sustained winds go, most of them are out of the east, very light near the coast, east-southeast, except Anna Maria is still showing a southwest direction. But general flow is out of the east-southeast right now, which is fairly typical for a summer pattern with high pressure right over the top of us. And down south, it continues to be out of the east-southeast, maybe a little stronger. That's good news for the smell, but again, it's going to be moving those fish that are dead and floating on the west-facing canals and waterways back toward the barrier islands. Now, as far as the weather headlines go, we still have a chance for a few isolated showers this evening. The west wind will continue, so it'll be switching around to the west really quickly tomorrow. And that will, again, bring that smell well inland, so that's not going away. And then we'll have some afternoon and evening storms coming back into play on in through the weekend. That means we'll return to an east to southeasterly wind. So that's what we have going right now as far as that wind forecast goes. So tonight, some areas will get a light west wind, but generally tomorrow, that wind will be out of the west-southwest, anywhere from 5 to 10 miles an hour, all the way through Wauchula and Arcadia, which will still bring some of that nasty smell well inland. A lot of people have been reporting on that. And it stays out of the west through the evening hours. And then eventually, as I said, we get to the weekend, we'll start to see more of the east winds throughout the day. And that will help things out a little bit for inland areas. Coastal locations will still have that impact of that red tide. So I also have seen some photos online and on social media. And one in particular caught my attention. It was from a captain who was fishing offshore some 12 miles. And he took a photo and showed thousands of fish that were dead out there. And by looking at the photo, it appeared to be some of the bait fish that you normally catch for some of the kingfish out there. Again, size, maybe 6-inch size, and thousands of them just dead out there 12 miles offshore. Now, most of you should know by now that red tide actually starts offshore 10 to 40 miles off our coast. And then as the winds change and the tides move, it starts to get closer and closer, which then can be fed by nutrients in the water. Nutrients being fertilizer that has run off from some of the lawns, some leaky septic tanks, also many other different variables come into play. And what you may not know is that red tide, or the harmful algae bloom, can actually eat based on the sunlight. So photosynthesis, it can actually drive these things as well, and that's how they live, and also through the nutrients. So a little update on the red tide. And we'll have a complete update coming up at 11 o'clock. Visit our website, mysuncoast.com, for more information. It gives kind of a list of what's going on as well with the red tide and the latest report. We have a full report coming out on Friday from the FWC, which will be a little bit more detailed as to the different samples that are being taken up and down west central coast of Florida. This is a big story, obviously. How long will it last? A lot of people ask me that all the time. No one knows for certain. No one can say, yeah, it's going to be gone in a week, it's going to be gone in 2. There have been red tides that have been sticking around for over a year on some documented cases. And back in 1878, I don't know how reliable that report is, but nonetheless, it was reported and recorded that it stuck around on again and off again for nearly 10 years. There have been some reports where it's been around for 18 months. Now, red tide, even though it may go away from the surface, could still linger in the lower levels of the column of water in the Gulf of Mexico. So it's something to watch. What we need, I think, and some experts have said this, is that we need a low pressure system in the Gulf of Mexico, high pressure to the east of the state, which would bring a strong easterly wind due to the strong pressure gradient, which would mean more winds in the speed of 15 to 20 miles an hour sustained throughout the day to kind of mix it up a little bit and blow it more offshore. We'll see how that plays out. We'll have the complete forecast coming up at 11 o'clock. I hope to see you then. I'll read some of your comments here after I'm ending this live shot and see if I can get back to you on some of this information that we just gave you. Thanks for joining us, and have a good night.